Welcome to the Bible Made Clear. We're in our final section of the dispensational series, Why It Matters. In other words, why does it even matter to go through this exercise to understand the different dispensations? Well, first, it creates a context to approaching the Bible. In other words, all the Bible is written for us, but not all the Bible is written to us. The entire Bible is for us, but there are only certain pieces as Christians that are written to us specifically. New Testament Christians are not Israel and should not be living under the Mosaic system of law to walk with God and to please God. This is what Paul deals with in the book of Galatians. So, though I learn a tremendous amount from the law of Moses, and the Old Testament is supremely valuable. Paul tells us in 1 Corinthians 10 that the things were written for our example, to whom the end of the ages has come. In Romans 15, it's through the patience and comfort of the scriptures that we have hope. In other words, the Old Testament is necessary, really, in order to fully understand the New Testament. The New Testament provides us the instruction as Christians, and it is written specifically to us, but the rest of the Bible is still for us, though the law really was written to Israel. They were under its obligation. So I don't offer sacrifices to have fellowship with God. I don't practice the 7 feasts in Israel. I don't do certain things. I don't have to cross the Jordan River in order to demonstrate my faith and go into the promised land. I don't need to do those things that were required of a nation prior to this age of the church. So it's important to make that distinction. In the dispensations, understanding the difference helps tremendously. Secondly, it helps view the Bible as a cohesive book that reveals the conditions of faith in each dispensation for the salvation of man and not works or laws. So what that means, the emphasis on faith established early in the scriptures and codified in Abraham, Genesis 15, enables the doctrine of justification by faith to be understood cohesively throughout the Old and New Testament. This is what the book of Romans really develops. Paul does it masterfully, clearly, and extensively so that we can understand what that means. But it is important, and the dispensations help us in this. It clears up confusion among Christians as to what their responsibility is to the law of Moses, which seems to create a lot of difficulty and legalism within Christian circles. Some Christians are trying to actually, at this point in time, put many Christians back under the law by talking about how they can become more spiritual by practicing certain things within the Jewish culture because Jesus did them. Well, that's actually not true. That's really Galatianism, and that's trying to add to the practices, certain rituals in another culture that is really not going to aid the spirituality of the people that are practicing it. It's actually detracting from their spirituality because it's creating more of an external physical connection, and God does not want a lot of that, especially as Christians in our relationship with Him. God is invisible, and we respond to Him by faith. So the sentence here, a dispensational approach to the Bible helps keep the proper relationship with the writer to the audience in the context of historical chronology. And that's why it's important to understand these dispensations so that we can separate the different conditions under which God puts people. It prevents the mistake of allegorizing Scripture to make them fit prophetically into the end time scenario. Very important. Removing the dispensational distinction blurs the line between how God is relating to various groups, in other words, Israel and the church in particular, and confuses related verses meant for one or the other group. This is a tremendous confusion in the church today, where a lot of prophecy is allegorized And I went through the problems of allegorization in another video where we talked about general principles of Bible interpretation, because when we start allegorizing scripture, especially in prophecy, what ends up happening is I can basically make it say what I want to say, because in the allegorizing method of interpreting the Bible, the interpreter becomes the basis of the interpretation, not the Bible itself. We're not allowing the Bible to say what it is saying. We're imposing what we think it should be saying, and we create the allegory in order to have that happen. So as soon as we move away from the literal, or what we would call the normal understanding of Scripture, then we start to fall away from that standard of separation within the different dispensational distinctions that are required in order for us to make sure that we're applying the Bible correctly, especially prophecy. The simple thing is that you never see anybody in the Bible understanding previous prophecy in an allegorizing way. They always understand it literally. As a matter of fact, if there's any mistake that's made, even in past church history, is that people did not take the Bible literal enough, especially when it came to prophecy. Also, it avoids replacement theology, which is tied to this topic, which is the belief that the New Testament church replaces Israel in prophecy, which is a result of confusing dispensations or trying to combine them, which really happens typically among covenant theology, which is, again, a whole other subject. So when prophecy is allegorized, the distinction between Israel and the church become confused. Keeping a consistent dispensational distinction between peoples, Israel and the church, will prevent confusion and avoid false conclusions. So, very important. There's a whole move towards replacement theology. It's anti-Semitic. There's really no way around it. The New Testament is very supportive of Israel. Yes, Israel for a temporary time has been put aside while God reaches out around the entire world, bringing Gentiles from every nation to Christ to build the church, the bride of Christ, and prepare. Paul tells us in Romans 11, that's going to occur until the fullness of the Gentiles comes in. When that happens, the rapture will occur, and then God will start to deal with Israel again, completing the final 7-year period determined by Daniel chapter 9 upon Israel and Israel alone. So, yes, he will deal with the rest of the world. We see that in the book of Revelation. But again, a larger topic for another time. But keeping a dispensational distinction helps keep that separation. Now, finally, Paul taught it. We started this presentation with Paul's use and application of the term as he applied it to the current dispensation of the church as distinct from that of Israel. The church did not exist in the Old Testament. Jesus made reference to it being a future group he would build, Matthew 16:18. This is the first mention of it in the Bible, and why Paul calls it a mystery. Talked about this. Mystery is not prophesied in the Old Testament, but revealed in the New. So the best reasons for keeping this dispensational distinction, in particular with Israel and the church, Jesus and Paul are the best reasons for keeping it. So that's the end of the dispensations. And we'll be posting some more videos on different subjects and some brief overviews of books of the Bible. So may God continue to bless you as you study his word.